Thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
I find it very appropriate that we're talking about this film on Bastille Day with the two of you in Paris.
What a great way to start.
How did the two of you come to work together on this project?
Well, Anisia and I started conceptualizing this project not very long after we met. And it was a means of connecting our stories, our histories, our interests, and our imagination surrounding the possibility of something that we might do together.
The process of making Neptune Frost seems like it's gone through a lot of different evolutions, which I think is very appropriate considering like how the film turned out and like what it is about. Like, what was the process of developing this project from like the original concepts to the Kickstarter to the film that folks are seeing now?
So the evolution of the project was long. It was a long process with, I think, the time to gather a lot of information, material, exchanges, encounters, research. A lot of research was allowed by that timeline that started very clearly with the idea that this would be a big project and that we would need that time to gather everything needed, the community around it, the producers, the talents, all those things. And I think it was like a very innovative and interesting way of envisioning production. Yeah. How do you produce that type of film?
Yeah, and in terms of how we conceived it, there's only one thing that changed. Only one thing that changed, which was that we were thinking of this as a Broadway play. And then when we finally showed our script to a Broadway producer, he said, I think this should be a movie, and I'd be more excited to invest if it were a film. That's the only change, the subject matter, the scale, because Broadway is as big as a film. And to him, he saw it as more expensive to invest in it as a Broadway play than to invest in it as a film. And so that's the only change. Other than that, like Anisia said, the scale of the project, the time that we knew it would take, with most musicals, for example, you're going to have one person who does the music, someone else who writes the book, and just like in most films, you're going to have one person who directs it, and someone else who shoots it. So Anisia as a cinematographer and a director, me as a composer and a director, we were multitasking all along, and that was the plan. Even the graphic novel, which was a part of the original conception, is on its way. It'll be out in 2023. The only surprise is that we beat the graphic novel with the film, right? Yeah. But that makes sense when you consider that a film has, like Neptune Frost, had about over 100 hands on it to get it done. Even though Anisia and I were there, behind everybody saying, no, it's this, like this, connecting the dots, connecting the people, connecting the talent, connecting the vision to our overall vision. But with the graphic novel, it's one or two illustrators max, doing everything.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. What I think is interesting is that like folks got kind of glimpses at various aspects of like what would become Neptune Frost over the years. There's the live performance you did at the Les Guess Who Festival in 2018 with King Britt, which you know, like has the title of that performance is the greeting that everyone says in the film. Do you consider that to be sort of like not quite workshopping the piece, but to an extent like working out some of the ideas that you were conceptualizing for the content of the film?
Certainly, but I was extremely transparent from the beginning. Like at the release of MartyrLoserKing album, I said, I'm writing a musical. These songs are from the musical. You know, I was very transparent about what I was doing. Yes, being on the road, performing while doing the research, the reading, while continuing the dialogue with Anisia, trying these things in public spaces, was all a transparent process where we were always clear that there would be several entry points, that there would be, you know, cinephiles who would hear about it first as a film and go, oh my gosh, there's all this music to support it, not just the soundtrack. Or there would be graphic novel lovers who would encounter the graphic novel when that comes out and goes, yo, did you know there's a movie for this and there's music? Or that there would be, you know, music fans who would go, yo, he's been working on da da da. We were always aware of all of those components. And the only thing that I was not transparent about, which was conscious, was that the music that I was releasing in MartyrLoserKing and Encrypted and Vulnerable was actually the demos, the reference tracks that I was sharing with the actors, knowing that we would then have to go through the process of translation and them being the ones who sing it.
That was that goes very perfectly to like the question I was going to ask, like, how is it for you as an artist to have to go through the translation process to have these songs put into languages that you yourself do not speak?
Exciting. I mean, we worked with extraordinary talents in terms of Rwandan and Burundian musicians, poets, actors, choreographers, but in terms of the translation, we worked with extraordinary musicians and poets in Rwanda, and it was, you know, it was us working directly with them while we were there in pre-production, paying a special attention to the language in a song, because not only did it have to be translated, but it had to rhyme, you know? And I went into this. I mean, if you asked me in 2012, when we first started conceptualizing this, I would have told you that my big excitement then, as it is now, is to be able to say, I wrote the subtitles. That's the poet in me. That's what I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to write the subtitles.
Now, Anisia, like the production of this film is so interesting because it all takes place in these spaces that for the most part are created. Like, how does that work for you as a director to come into these places wherein like you've had a hand in crafting them to look so that you can shoot them, if that makes any sense?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but in terms of the landscape, it's a landscape that I'm familiar with. And it was the idea of giving them the magicality that I see in them, that maybe not everyone is seeing in them. And the fact that it was a science fiction allowed me to push it to the extraordinary, to the brilliance that I see in it. Rwanda is one of the greenest countries. in the world, actually. It's a country of 1,000 hills, who has like a lot of, you know, magicality for me, if you want to show that. And so it was like the opportunity to really look at it from also the perspective of maybe a child, or maybe, you know, like Alice in Wonderland, or something that was a little bigger than reality, which allowed us to create lights and moods and emotions and colors, and to translate the fantastic part of the story, the fact that it's a vortex. You have to go through a portal to arrive to that destination, and what does that mean in that environment? It was very much freeing to be able to go towards the science fictional lens.
The thing I really appreciate about this film is that while it is sci-fi, it feels handcrafted. And I don't mean that in a way where it feels like it's cobbled together. It feels like this is made by someone with a very or several someones that just feels as though it's put together with care, with attention to detail, and it what was the visual aesthetic that you all were going for when you wanted to like figure out how this film looks of the place where it is?
Well, I think it started with that very clear and amazing visual, which was that we discovered the e-waste camps. So e-waste camps is where our tech goes to die. It's like planes and planes of, you know, old computers, phone, etc., arriving and, you know, letting go of all that material on, you know, very huge places, village-sized places, and those village place, those places are just next to the mines where those materials are sourced. So you have two visuals. I mean, if you're talking about visuals, you have two very strong, you know, inspiration and you know, yeah, image to work with.
Yeah.
And so the idea of that village made of recycled computer parts was born, you know, because of that reality.
And because we were seeing already a movement in a lot of these places where these e-waste camps exist of this sort of artisanal work and technological and engineering work that was done through the upcycling of these materials. You know, so I remember years ago reading about and seeing images of a young person in Togo who had made a 3D printing machine from materials sourced from an e-waste camp, and seeing someone in Sierra Leone that had made prosthetic limbs from materials sourced at an e-waste camp. And then we were seeing art being born, a lot of artwork on the continent being born from, you know, stuff that was sourced from an e-waste camp. So,
and also the connection with technology, which is so important in the continent, in the visual aspect of it. And then there is that encounter with Cedric Mizero. We cannot speak about the aesthetic of the film without talking about that wonderful encounter with that artist, which is who is a fashion designer and visual artist. We met in 2016 when we were, you know, scouting and shooting the teaser reel for the Kickstarter campaign. And we were presented to that young, very young artist that was doing things that nobody was understanding over there. You know, that was like, he's crazy. He's like, and so Saul told him the story that was already, you know, very much like what you see in the film. And he was listening. And then the next day he comes back to our house, and he came back with sandals made of computer parts. And
yeah,
we were
just
like
blown away, because the other, I think part of, that was the that moment with Cedric, meeting Cedric for Anisia and I. It was the moment where we really knew. It was the first layer of team building outside of ourselves. We were like, okay, now we have a local partner that gets it.
And more than that, that pushed it to the, we were talking about that even the other day, how important he is in the overall idea and aesthetic and visual, and also how he really melted his own vision with ours.
Yeah,
it was really that kind of magic encounter, the dream encounter for collaboration, actually. And then after that, it was just a matter of, when is it ready? Where can we put, for the videos, where can we put the camera? This is not ready, etc., etc.
And him blowing our minds. I mean, there are moments I could think of where, like, I remember, so, because we shot the sizzle reel in 2016 and we shot the film in 2020, we had time. Our team had time. He spent all that time designing the set, the costumes. He had time to think about it, to gather resources. But, because we could trust him, and we described, for example, Patolo the Avatar, who visits MartyrLoser and Neptune in the dream in the beginning of the film. We didn't say, these are wheels made of bicycle wheels or anything like that. We arrive at his studio after we arrive in the country for pre-production, and he says, I made this for Patolo, look. And we see first we see the diagram on the wall, and we're like, okay. And then we see the actual object, and he puts it on and it works and it's spinning, and we're like,
it is someone that you can say anything and he will transform it in something possible. It's not it's somebody that enabled a lot of the imagination, with a lot of resourcefulness, who had a crew of 6 to 8 artisans working with him, that he's communicating very well with, and that, like, we're doing, like,
extraordinary things. But that's the other thing, is that along the way, when you meet people who are like, especially in filmmaking, you can, producers, artists, you can meet people who are like, well, that's impossible, or people who are like, resourceful, we can find a way to do that. Always.
And he is that person.
He's one of those, we can find a way to do that.
I think that really speaks to, like, the finished product, the finished film, because it's just the idea that it feels very collaborative. It feels like this is definitely something that could not have been done by one person. This is like a group of people working towards a goal. And I think what I really appreciate about it is that trying to explain any one part does not explain the whole, which is kind of very like how it came together.
Yeah, it's true. But sitting here next to Anisia, she hates when I do this, but I do have to say that because it is a film.
Don't say.
Because it is a film, there's no one who held the vision of the film as a film like Anisia. There's no one who after it was shot, because there's the fight with the lights and all that, that's her while we're shooting, and with all the crew who are like, I'm tired, or it's late, it's 4 a.m, or da 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 da, and not until Anisia would say, we got it, we can move on. Can we move on? And it's the same thing with the editing process, the perpetual insistence of, like, that's not it yet. That's not it. It could be smoother. It's rough. Look at that frame. How come, like, all of these things that you have to have the vocabulary to even appreciate. And if you think that we are evenly yoked in that ability to appreciate or see those things, she's like, that yellow in the blue, that yellow, why is that yellow? And I'm like, You know, so there's,
which is to say I was the mean person.
no,
No.
It's just that there has to be, you know, like there's this level of insistence that I certainly have around music. And anything that I try to explain or understand, I can come to understanding it through a music analogy, even, you know, even in poetry, I'm using music or language analogies there, you know, but that that makes this film cinema, that makes it, you know, that makes every frame what it is also sourced in that appreciation that Anisia was developing from being a teenager, you know. We both have that love of cinema, we both come from theater, we both come from acting, but there is a complementary sort of merging.
But I do think also that what you are referring to, it's also a film that speaks about community. And so I think that is what you are feeling.
Yeah.
It is a lot about how we find each other, and how when we find each other, what it produces, right? What kind of power it generates.
Yeah.
And of course, that was the intention of the story, that feeling that you have.
Very much intentional, very much intentional. We saw a critic who said, you know, that they listed the good and the bad, and in the bad side, they said part of it feels like a Jodorowsky community theater workshop. And I'm like, that's bad?
That sounds fantastic. That's a selling point for me. Like.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, dude, that's what we were going for.
Well, that's wonderful. I want to thank you, Saul and Anisia, for taking time to talk to me today. This has been really fantastic. I quite enjoyed the film, and I'm trying to convince everyone I know to see it. And I hope this interview also convinces more people that they should go see it. Thank you again so much for your time. I hope you both have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank
we'll be
you.
waiting for the fireworks.
Bye-bye. So long. Thank you.
All right. Ciao. Bye-bye. Thank you.